Right, this video is going to focus a little bit on finding the p-value interval for each chi-square test value. So we are not able to find a p-value by itself, but what we can say, well, the probability of getting such a score, like here, this score over here is 13.974. In the interval between, let's say, 5 and 10%, or between 2.5% and 5%. So this is sort of going to be our essentially what we're going to be doing here. Now, if you want to find the exact value, you obviously need to use the chi-square calculator or the calculator function for inverse chi-square in your TI-84. But we can just look at the table for a few minutes and sort of understand the concept. So we have a z-score or a chi-square score. And we know that this was a sample of 28, which means that you should be looking in the line of degrees of freedom of 27. And you know that this is two-tailed. Okay, so there is going to be another side to this as well. Okay, so once we do that, okay, let's look at our table. Let's look at our chi-square table here, and we should be able to essentially figure this out. So we're going to start by going, so our degrees of freedom is 27. So don't go to the row with 28, go to the row with 27. In this row, I am looking for the value 13.974. Now, I do not have 13.9, but it should reside right here between 12.8 and 14.5. So 13.9 should be living in between those two. Okay, so the range is going to be between this and this. Okay, now this is a two-tailed test. Okay, so you should also say, well, okay, it's between 1 and 2.5%. Okay, so this value over here is between the p-value. The probability of getting this value is anywhere between 1 and 2.5%. But don't forget that this is a two-tailed test, so you would have to grab these boundaries and double them. So between 2 and 5%. Okay, because again, when we have a p-value that is only on one side, and I know that this is double-sided, I would have to go and do and double that p-value. Okay, so this is letter A, and now let's look at the previous. Let's look at the next one. The next one says your chi-square is actually, let me clean this off. Your chi-square is 10.571, and you have a sample size of 19, which would mean degrees of freedom is 18, and it's only left tail. So I should be only looking at the left tail. Okay, let's look at the left tail for this. Degrees of freedom again is 18. Do not look at the row 19. You are looking at degrees of freedom, and I'm looking for 10.5. I am just going across 10.5, 10.5, and I realize that 10.5 should be somewhere in between these two. It's trapped between these two values. So 10.5 is a little bit closer to 10.8. Okay, so this is, and again, this is a left value. Okay, so this value of 10.5, what is the probability of getting it? Well, the probability of getting this should be anywhere between 5 and 10%. And now you don't need to double that like we were doubling the previous one, because this is only one tail. So there is no need to double anything. All we're going to do is just look at that and say, okay, the probability of getting that is anywhere between the 0.95, because we're counting from this side, and 0.90 says that the probability of getting this is between 95 and 90, or 5 and 10%. Okay, I just want to also look in the calculator and make sure that this lines up. So here we have the calculator for the chi-square. And for this chi-square, I'm going to begin by just putting the degrees of freedom, okay? Degrees of freedom are important. This is what I do with my new. I put the degrees of freedom in there. Immediately it generates the curve for me. And I also need my value. My value was roughly 10.5. I don't quite remember. Let me just double check that. 10.571. 10.571. Okay, and I need to get the left tail. Now you clearly don't see here the left tail, you see the right tail. So let's put it in the left tail. So in order to get this cutoff score, this chi-square score, okay, I am going to have the p-value, the probability of it, of roughly 8.8%. And this is precisely what we said. We said the range is going to be between 5 and 10%. Okay, that's how we use the calculator, and that's how we use the table to answer this question.